Okay, this is MD Perkins with Startup Live here with Myles Weissleder from SF New Tech. Watching all of the events tonight, all the presentations, privacy seemed to be a major issue, both with the presenters and the audience.
So startups, obviously privacy should be baked into terms of service as it should be, but some lose sight of what the ramifications of the privacy ecosystem are. Most startups are great at it, and most learn as they go, and that's okay. The problem is when the government doesn't respect your privacy, and that's what we're learning, more and more, and ever increasing, is that we need a defense.
So we're talking about self-regulation as opposed to imposed regulation. Getting something taken care of beforehand, before it starts being legislated in.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. There are certain things that can and should happen prior to regulation, the least of which should be a world uprising, but that tends to be the default, right? When you see legislation like SOPA and PIPA hit a threshold where suddenly websites are like, wait a minute, this is crazy, we're turning off.
Yeah.
So, the SOPA PIPA debate came and went real quick. We had a protest here in San Francisco that corralled maybe 200-300 people compared to 2,000, 3,000 in New York City.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see how the community coalesced a little bit at the last second. But, the likes of Ron Conway got up there, and Craig Newmark got up there, and MC Hammer got up there, and I got up there to say this stuff is bad.
It's nefarious, yeah.
Right? It's nefarious. And what folks don't tend to realize is that just because we defeated SOPA PIPA as one of those issues that was bad for the internet, doesn't mean there aren't other bad ones coming down the pike, and there certainly are. And to throttle up the frenzy and the fury of the internet community to that extent that we saw in SOPA PIPA, basically what we're finding is it starts at ground zero. It has to be zero base again to get people all riled up, and it's a cyclical thing. So I do a lot of work with AccessNow.org, which is an awesome organization out of New York City, firmly based in protecting human rights through ensuring that people can communicate freely online, that their privacy is protected, that you can access the internet as a basic human right of freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
So what can we tell startups? What do they need to know to protect their users' privacy and their own?
So with startups, it's so hard because their eye is on the prize. They need to show some traction with regard to membership or subscriptions or whatever it might be, their metrics of success, so they can actually be around 6 months from now.
Yeah.
They need to obtain funding. Their eye is on the business plan. That business plan isn't necessarily hard-coded to a human rights plan.
Yeah.
And it's our job to educate them on that kind of stuff. It's not easy, obviously, but one of the outcomes of the Silicon Valley Human Rights Conference that we produced back in October, where we brought together Facebook and Twitter and Yahoo and Skype and all the major players, and then we brought activists in from Egypt and Tunisia and Syria to talk about that side of the equation, and the whole privacy lobby. Everybody was in the same room. It was awesome. But one of the big takeaways was what we call the Silicon Valley Standard, which is basically a document, it was a best practice document, that if you are creating technology that might impact human rights, it might not happen in Peoria, but it might happen in Kabul.
Sure.
The internet is far-reaching, and a lot of startups, and even not so startups, big companies are so myopic in their thinking. It's like everything is focused on the bottom line, and everything is about delivering product and making customers happy. That's all fine and good, but you cannot forget that you're writing code that might actually impact somebody's life down the line, where they use Facebook and Twitter as a mechanism of communication, whereas we might use it to post a silly picture of a guy revving the tower, whatever we saw, crazy stuff. The internet is all fun and games, but for other parts of the world, it's like it's a lifeline that is in danger.
Yeah.
And there's serious issues coming down the line. And nobody's talking about it, unless they're beat on the head with it.
And so often when you look at some of this proposed legislation, the critiques of them are that it's almost as though they don't understand the internet. They don't understand how it's working. So part of the job seems to be almost to do reverse education instead of the other way around.
It's like every time we think we've drilled it home, it's like we get a surprise.
Yeah.
The big headline over the last few days with CISPA is that like it's astounding how like these guys just did it again. These sponsors, like the sponsors for this bill, you know, that like, hello, didn't you get the last uprising of like what this meant to the internet community and how bad it was? It's like, remember you changed your mind, and then you come forth and now you're sponsoring this one. It's like, what is it?
Yeah.
You know, and it could be as simple as it boils down to the lobbying effort and the money being spent on the other side of the IP lobby and copyright lobby, and they've got valid arguments, but there are better ways of doing it than breaking the internet process.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Myles.
Thank you.
Good to speak with
Thanks
you.
for coming down. Yeah. So this was a cool event that we do here every couple of weeks that gives startups an opportunity to show off, and we get to grill them and make them sweat on stage and drink some beers. Talk policy. It's cool.
Never a bad time.
Yeah.
MD Perkins from Startup Live, Myles Weissleder from SF New Tech.